Now I want to show you how to use the most important tool in Adobe Photoshop. This is layers. So let's create a new file. We have a dialog box here. Here we have to define the size of our document. So here are some size presets like 2012 by 12 and like 500 by 500 pixels and so on. I have set the size to 140 by 150 millimeters. 300 pixels per inch is the resolution. I will explain what that is later. The color mode is RGB color. I'll explain that later as well. And you can set the units here to pixels or inches or centimeters or whatever. If you set it to centimeters, it will become 14 by 15 centimeters, which is the same size but in other units. So our default units will be millimeters. So let's create this file. So basically we create an empty page on which we can work. This is called canvas in Adobe Photoshop. And so now let's open the layers palette, and you will see that we have one layer here. Now before we start working, I want to show you by clicking here, you have these panel options for the layers panel, and here I have set the thumbnail size to the biggest possible. So if you set it to a smaller size, this is how it will look. It will require less space. You can fit more layers here, but the preview of different layers will be smaller. So I prefer to have it bigger because I have a big screen size. So it's up to you. If you want to change the thumbnail size, you go here and do it. So I have just one layer here at present, which is called background, and it's all white, as you can see. And let me add a layer now. So when I click on this icon here, a new layer appears on top of the layer that is currently active. So if I click on it again, I will get a new layer, and this layer becomes now active. If I activate this layer by clicking on it, you see this is the active layer, and add a layer, so I will get a new layer on top of that one, like this. So this one was active and the new layer is here. So now I have created 1, 2, 3 layers, and there's the fourth layer called background. So what does it mean that the layer is active? If I start doing something, like using the brush tool, for example, I start drawing something with a brush tool, you will see that this drawing appears on the layer which is currently active. Now if I activate another layer and I use a different color of a paintbrush and draw something there, you will see this green dot will be on the layer which is active. And also you can see that these layers are stacked, so layer 2 is on top of layer 3, and therefore you can see this green dot, and behind it is this red line. Now if I take the move tool, this layer is active, so when I start moving, only this layer will move because it's the active layer, and the other layers will not move. And you see that this red line is partially covered by this green dot, so it's behind it. And if I activate this layer now and draw something else with a brush tool in a different color, like this, you will see it will be both behind layer 2 and layer 3 will be layer 1. Let me call this, I can rename layers, so let me call this blue. Let me call this red, and let me call this green. So the good thing about layers is that I can create an image of which consists of different parts, and the parts are separate. So when I move some parts, the other will not be affected, and I can choose which layer I'm editing. Also, if I, for example, use my eraser tool and I start erasing like here on this layer, it will erase only the red layer but not the green one and not the blue one, as you see. So my eraser tool works only on the layer which is currently active. So I can edit layers independently from each other, and that's the good thing about Photoshop. Now, if I want to do something behind this green dot, I can temporarily hide it by clicking on this eye. This layer will disappear, so I don't delete this layer, I just hide it so it becomes invisible. I can turn it on back again. So I can hide and show layers, and I can also reorder layers. So for example, I can take this blue layer and pull it above the red layer, you see, and then above the green layer. So now blue will be on top, green will be behind it, and red will be behind the green. Now if I want to protect a layer from accidentally drawing on it, I can lock it. By pressing this lock key, you see now this layer is locked. If I try to erase it, to use my eraser tool, Photoshop will tell me this is not possible because the layer is locked. If I try to move it, it's not possible because the layer is locked. I can unlock it, and I can lock only the position, so I can't move it. But I can erase it, or I can draw on it, but not move it. Or the other way around, I can unlock the position, but lock drawing, so then I can't draw on it, I can't erase it, but I can move it. So I can lock different operations on layers, or I can lock it all together, so then I can do nothing here, or I can unlock it by clicking here or here. It will be unlocked. So apart from reordering layers and renaming them, I can also delete layers which I don't no longer need by clicking here on the delete layer on the recycle bin icon. Okay, delete, and it will ask me, do you want to delete it? Let me say no to this. Or I can drag it here into this recycle bin, then it won't ask me, and delete it without asking. Let me undo that by pressing Ctrl Z. Or I can activate a layer and then just press delete on my keyboard, and then it will delete it. Let me undo this as well. Now I can also activate multiple layers, and it's the same as selecting files in Windows. So if I activate this layer and then I press the Shift key, it will activate all the layers between the two layers I have clicked. Now if I move them, they will move all together, as you can see, because all three of them are activated. Now if I activate this layer and then I press Ctrl and then click on this layer, then it will activate only these two layers. So if I start moving it, these two layers will move and the green one will remain where it is. Alright, and then there's also one very useful thing that I can do. I can group layers into groups. So let me activate these two layers, and then I will press Ctrl G, and that will create a group out of these two layers. So it looks like a folder in Windows. So if I click on this, I will see the two layers inside this group. So if I'm on this group and the group is active, I start moving, it will move only the layers which are in this group. Okay, so by grouping layers I can organize them better. So let me call this like cool colors, for example. And I can also put just one layer into a group. So I can right click it and say group from layers, and I will call this warm colors. Okay, so I will have two groups, one with cold colors and one with warm colors. So all my layers are well organized, and sometimes you have like up to 100 layers in a complex Photoshop file. So you need all this in order to have a good overview of your layers. You see, yeah, like this. Now let me unlock this background layer. Okay, so I remove the lock, and also it's no longer called background, but it's called layer 0. And let me hide it. So what I will see here is I will see this pattern, this checkered pattern, which means that in this area there are no colored pixels, and I will explain what pixels are later on. But so this area is empty, there is no color here. Here there is color which comes from the red layer, here there's color which comes from the blue layer, and there's color which comes from the green layer, and here there is no color at all. So if I turn on the background layer, then here I will have white color. So white color is not empty, like this one's empty. All right. So, well, basically that's all I wanted to tell you about organizing layers. So you can organize them into group, you can rename them, you can reorder them, you can drag them up and down on top of each other. So you can drag also groups like this. So now this group is on top and this group is below it. You can drag a group into another group. So now you have this organized, same as you dragging folders in Windows. So you can drag a folder into another one. Or if you create a new layer here and paint something on it with, let us say, yellow, yeah, then you can drag this layer into a group here like this, or into this like this. So it works exactly like files and folders in Windows menus, and the layers, they are stacked on top of each other and they cover each other. So that is a very important tool for Photoshop. And one thing, just one last thing I want to tell you, whatever you're doing in Photoshop, keep different objects separate, because you can edit them separately then. If something is there you dislike about is yellow, you can edit it without affecting all the other elements of your image. So you can work on layers separately, and that makes it a lot easier to correct your images. So that's all about layers. Thank you very much.